welcome to Contango Ore's live summit today, hosted by Six. I'm pleased to pronounce President and CEO Rick van Nieuwenhuyse. Rick is going to be reviewing the latest updates from Contango Ore, after which we will have a live Q&A session. Throughout today's session, we will be accepting questions that you can submit using the Q&A chat bar on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you'd like to get in touch with the Contango Ore team, at the Q&A session, I will be putting up a survey in the chat, so look out for that. As always, this summit is being recorded and will be available to watch afterwards on six.com. So without further ado, I'll hand things over to you, Rick, to kick things off.
Perfect, Kyle. Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Giving an update on company activities, a bit of a focus on our resource update at Lucky Shot. It's a beautiful day here in Fairbanks, Alaska. Of course, I will be making forward-looking statements, so just keep that in mind. We are developing Alaska's next gold mines. Our Manh Choh project, construction is underway. Of course, that's the joint venture with Kinross at 70% on lands owned by the Tetlin tribe. And second up is our Lucky Shot mine, where we've now done an initial resource and will continue to explore this high-grade, historically mined gold mine. Just quick overview on corporate structure. $70 million credit facility was signed up with ING and Macquarie. We have all permits at Manh Choh. Construction is well underway, and we're on track to be in production in 2024. I was just out there the other day, so I'm going to show you some photos of construction activities at site there. Of course, we're really proud to be on the short list of being included in the Russell 3000. That'll be finalized here next week, actually on the 26th, I guess that is. So it's a big milestone and achievement for the company as well. So at Manh Choh, we are under construction. We've just approved our second half budget, so Q3, Q4 budget. It's a total of $136 million. So this summer and fall, we'll be spending a lot of dollars and advancing the project in a very significant way to line us up for production in 2024. And of course, with our debt financing arranged with our banking partners, we're well financed to get this thing done. I mentioned earlier that winter construction has continued all winter on the road. That's put us ahead of schedule. And so if you went out there today, this is what you'd see. Basically, the road goes all the way up to the mine site. It's not like finished, but it's drivable. And so we've been able to get our large equipment up there. As I mentioned, we were on site with the Kinross and our banking partners to see the activities. This is a couple of shots of the mine trucks, the haul trucks working, the excavators, and just leveling off the area and preparing it for mining. Kiewit will have about 40 pieces of equipment coming up this week. A lot of activity going on, of course, with all that mining equipment showing up. Just recently, Alaska has road limitations, weight limitations on roads in the springtime because of the spring thaw. Things are a little soft on the highways, and so they have a weight restriction. That's now been removed for the summer months. And so the big equipment is going to be able to come up on the highways. That's the 777 Cats. That's the 100-ton haul trucks, the blast hole rig, and the 1640 excavator. So all the big stuff will show up in the next week or two, and it'll be assembled on site and start to get to work. So as I said, it's going to be a very, very busy, very, very busy summertime at Manh Choh. Haul trucks, the ore haul trucks, Black Gold is our contractor there. And just in the bottom corner there, you see a fleet of about 20 tractors to pull the trailers. So they're starting to show up. And it's pretty exciting to see all this big equipment show up for just to get this thing underway. So just a lot of activity going on. We also had the opportunity to go and visit the Fort Knox facility and look at what we call the mill modifications or mill mods that are going on at Fort Knox to accommodate the Manh Choh ore. Of course, Fort Knox has been in operation for 25 years. It's a big operation, both a mill and a heap leach facility. We won't be, the Manh Choh ore won't be part of the heap leach facility, just going through the mill. And there are some modifications in the mill, basically to accommodate the 15 times higher grade that Manh Choh ore is compared to the typical Fort Knox mill ore, which is just over half a gram. And our ore, of course, is 8 grams per ton. So more tanks to deliver the cyanide mix for the carbon, for the detox circuit, the thickener, more lime that needs to be added to the ore as it goes off of the stockpile into the mill. You can see zone 3 there on the slide is a series of conveyors that basically the harder ores, when it goes through the SAG mill the first time, it kicks out the harder ore. And in Fort Knox, you can see this conveyor that goes off to the right in the diagram. That's a pebble reject, and they don't process that ore at Fort Knox because it doesn't contain very much gold. Whereas our hard ore, we will want to process because it does contain a lot of gold. So that's why this Zone 3 conveyor system kind of wraps around from the mill back into the feed circuit. The rest of it's pretty much tanks. The other tankage associated with the various circuits at Fort Knox, there's no real fundamental difference in the processing at Fort Knox. At the mills, it's just more tankage and piping. Zone 2 there is the laydown area for the ore. That's under preparation right now. They're building a road out to it and a dumping facility. So the ore haul trucks will come up to Zone 2, drop the Manh Choh ore there, and then it'll be hauled around to the coarse ore stockpile that you see on the very left bottom corner there. So all this is happening. Outside work is a priority to get done. Inside work obviously can be done in the wintertime. So get the outdoor work when it's nice out. This is a picture of the stockpile area. You can see the diagram there that's showing the road under construction and how the stockpile area will be worked out. The dumping area would be higher, obviously, with the ore haul trucks having a side dump onto the lower pad there. That construction's underway. In addition, so the last area is a tailings facility. We're going to be depositing the Manh Choh ore in pit in the older part of the Fort Knox pit, the deepest part of the pit. And they need this 14-inch poly line to go down the pit. It's about a 3.5 mile journey from the mill down to the bottom of the pit. Very impressive operation, very impressive size pit. Kinross does heap leaching at Fort Knox, so they're used to splicing this poly pipe together, and they put it together in about 500-foot lengths and then drag it downhill. You can see the middle slide there, the length of the poly pipe, and see that big haul truck. And next to that's a grader. It looks small from here, but both those are big pieces of equipment. So again, very impressive to see all this coming together at site. Just a summary, of course, I think everybody's been following the story knows this, but we'll be producing about 300,000 ounces of gold over the 4.5-year mine life, average of about 67,500 ounces for Contango's account, average grade 8 grams per ton. This is a very high grade open pit ore body. Our capital costs, and as I mentioned earlier, we're on budget, but we are ahead of schedule. So that's a good thing, and we're financed to get this done. Now we've got the last number I think we had update on here was the $116 per gold equivalent ounce for our all-in sustaining costs. So you can see with today's gold price, in the 1950 range, we've got a really good margin here. So again, while Kinross is advancing the project meaningfully to production in 2024, we can focus on advancing our other project here at Lucky Shot, of course, located in central Alaska, just outside of Anchorage, about an hour and a half drive from Anchorage. And of course, high-grade underground, historically mined vein. Our recent resource update tells us that we can develop ore with about a 15.6 gram average grade. That's about a half an ounce per ton. And we've got about a mile of strike length between the Lucky Shot segment and the Coleman segment of the vein. With the in-search tunnel that we've developed the access point on, that's pretty much right in the middle of the two segments. And that's what's allowed us to continue to develop and explore the vein, Lucky Shot vein, and both segments, the Lucky Shot segment, Coleman segment, from underground. We did this last year, refurbished the in-search tunnel, the historic part of that tunnel, expanded it out to cross-cut the vein, and built a cross-cut in a drift in the footwall. And our plans this summer are to put a drift in the hanging wall and another drift in the footwall off to the east. We'll be raising money to do that. I do remind people that we are a fully permitted active mine site. Safety is our top priority. And we are proud to have a zero lost time incident reporting to MSHA. So let's get on to the resource. We just announced this earlier this week. And as I mentioned, there's sort of two segments of the Lucky Shot vein that we're following so far. The vein continues along strike, but we'll focus on where we've got the drilling done. The Coleman segment, obviously the most drilling, it's about 150 holes in the Coleman, mostly drilled from surface. You've got about 190,000 tons at 15.6 grams per ton for a total of 95,000 ounces in the indicated category. Now, we weren't able to convince our QP to give us any measured resource. Statistically, he was comfortable doing it, but because none of that drilling was done by Contango, he felt that we should put our own holes, maybe 3, 4, 5 holes in and around the historically drilled holes. And these were drilled in the early 2000s, 2005 to 2010 time period. So that's one of our objectives this year, is to get some confirmatory holes in that well-drilled resource that we can now then upgrade it to measured. And you can see there's basically inferred resource as a lower grade, and that's because it's around the edges and it's not as well drilled, and it pulls in material that basically where you don't have any assays, and so it has a tendency to, when you use the statistical search ellipse, to reduce the grade of that material, because it's influenced by rock that you don't have any assays for. We're confident when we do more drilling around that, we'll upgrade that 9.9 to something in the neighborhood of 15.6. Similarly at Lucky Shot, again, far less drilling. We only have 29 holes in the Lucky Shot area. So therefore a relatively small tonnage of 36,000 tons, 8.9 grams per ton, but for 10,000 ounces. Again, that's in the indicated, and then a smaller amount of inferred. And that's, again, just kind of around the edges. You don't really get a lot of inferred resources with underground mines, because you don't want to project mineralization very far away from a known interval. And these are high-grade veins, so we know they're narrow, and we use a statistical method to cap the ore, as you don't want to assume too much more ore than is there. You want to have a good mine plan that's conservative, so that when you deliver a ton of rock, you know it's got grade in it. So you combine these, you can see we've got about 130,000 ounces of gold on a combined basis between the Coleman segment and the Lucky Shot segment. Nothing for Warbaby and Murphy. They're just too few holes. I think there's about a dozen holes in each of those areas. They've intersected the vein, but we just don't have enough drilling to have any sort of a resource there. As I mentioned, the vein is open both to the west and to the east, so west of Coleman and east of Murphy, and down dip. I mentioned this capping strategy, and we definitely have used it's called disintegration analysis. It's a statistical analysis to reduce the influence of high-grade samples. And so the more information you have, the more it allows you to use high-grade samples. Where you have less information, you only have one drill hole surrounded, with a large distance between them. It will reduce the influence of that high-grade sample. And so you can kind of see this in this diagram here with where you've got good drill density, the more pinky red colored blocks of the block model stand out, whereas we have less information. It tends to lower the capping strategy. It lowers the influence grade. You can see the historically mined area there. That's not a blanking drilling. That's actually where they mined out in the blue circle there. So we know that was ore. So we know we just need to drill more above it and below it. And of course, we're open down dip on the ore body. So I think with further drilling, we'll see an increase in our capping strategy, and an increase in the sense of a more liberal capping strategy, which will add ounces. And statistically, that's shown in this table here, where you can see, if I take the Coleman example and you just stick to the indicated grade, 190,000 tons, 15.6 grams per ton, when it was using the capping strategy. And if you used all the assays as they come across from the assay lab in the certificate, you can see the difference there is almost 21 grams. So it's about a 30% difference. So we've reduced our ounces by roughly 29% by using an aggressive, conservative capping strategy. So rather than having 127,000 ounces, we've reduced that to 95. And similarly at Lucky Shot, you can see the grade has gone from 8.9 grams per ton with using the capping strategy, whereas if with uncapped, you have about a 13-gram grade. So again, a difference of 10,000 ounces versus 15,000 ounces. So, which is an even greater metal loss if you sort of view it that way, or being more conservative by 38%. And that's because we have less drilling over here again. As we do drill more, get more drilling information, we'll be able to reduce that capping strategy loss. And I think we're not going to get it down to zero, but I think there's potential to get it down to sort of the 10 to 15% range. Typical capping strategies reduce about 10% of the metal. We have a very coarse ore and a very nuggety deposit, if you will, and so ours may be a little bit higher, but we'll certainly be able to improve the total ounces reported by using a less conservative capping strategy. So just want investors to understand we are being conservative, but as we gather more information, we'll be able to probably loosen that up a bit. Now, if you look at exploration upside, and that's what we know, 150 or 125,000 ounces is not enough to start a mine. We think we need somewhere in the 250 to 300,000 ounces range, but we can see that there is plenty of upside here. When we look at the Coleman, we've got plenty of spaces to increase down dip in both the down dip projection, but also on an ore shoot that is trending back towards the Lucky Shot. I think we've got about 100,000 ounces here now, and I think there's probably room for about 150. And of course, Lucky Shot, which is again far less well drilled. You can see the density of drilling difference here, but we're open completely down dip, and we now have the infrastructure in place with the refurbishment of the Lucky Shot the Ensearch adit. if you look at the block model in terms of measured and indicated, it's another good way to sort of look at an ore body. As I mentioned, we don't have any measured from a QP standpoint, but what's shown here in red is that the blocks that would statistically be calculated as measured if we had drilled them. Since we hadn't drilled them, we were going to put some confirmation holes in there, and then so we'll be able to extend the measured all the way down. And if we do more drilling in the Coleman area, we'll be able to bring all this whole area into a measured category. And then similarly, you can see how restrictive our resource blocks are for indicated over on the Lucky Shot, and against these ore shoots that we really want to focus our drilling on. And again, we'll put that in place as we continue to drill this ore body down dip. This is a view of the Lucky Shot, the in-search tunnel and the Lucky Shot segment of the vein. The distribution of the drilling is, and you can see it's wide space drilling, except for in the West Drift where we're able to get a couple of fans drilled last fall and get a good, nice block of ore there. Obviously, there's a space between the two. We know the vein continues there. We just need to drill more fan holes all across this, and then over to the east and then the hang wall. This is a cross-sectional example of that, one of those fan sets, and you can see the variation here in the nuggety nature of the gold. You've got 26 grams, next to 1.5 grams. But when you look at this statistically, we're coming out of just a little shy of 10 grams here. I do point out that when you go underground, you see a little more than what you might see in just a single drill hole. And we found a new vein underground that was not previously identified. We took some grab samples of it, and they ran really, really well. 26 grams, that's in the blue circle here. 26 grams per ton on one sample, and 379 grams, which is about 12 ounces. 26 grams is just shy of an ounce, but 379 grams per ton is 12 ounces. So that's a very good representation of this nuggety nature of the vein. And this is a new vein. So this is not the Lucky Shot vein. It's a subsidiary vein. And obviously, as we develop a mine plan around the Lucky Shot vein, we will bump into other veins. It's a whole shear zone. There are multiple veins in it. They do come and go, which is why you need a lot of drilling. And so that's really the next stage in developing the Lucky Shot ore body, is a lot of drilling. We have the 2090 West Drift and we'll plan to do a lot more drilling along that drift. We'll complete a 2080 drift, just a slight offset there, and that's a designation from the entrance of the tunnel off to the east, and then 2300 east and the 2280 west drifts. We offset these things just to make it a little easier for the equipment to move around and not get in each other's way. So this is the drilling that's planned for this summer and fall. Of course, once we're underground, or now that we're underground, we can work year round. We do have an active avalanche program. We've been out here a couple of seasons, and so we're getting used to where the problem areas are from a potential avalanche issues are, and so that's something we'll have to work around. Obviously, moving snow is a little more expensive than doing it in the summertime, but it did allow us to get year-round access and year-round drilling. And again, the plan here is to get sort of a 15 to 20 meter spacing on our drill points, and that'll give us enough information to put a good solid resource together and address that capping strategy, and perhaps be a little less conservative with that, and gain some metal in the process. I will stop there, and we'll turn it over to Q&A. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thanks, Rick, for the presentation. And if you'd like, you could even stop sharing your screen, because I'll plug in the chat, just a reminder, people, it's that little text box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. I'll put in a survey there if you actually would like to schedule a meeting with management, but feel free to fill out that survey. We do have a few questions. Let's start with the cap-in, because that cap-in strategy seems to have significantly reduced the total ounces. If I heard correctly, 29% reduced. What can be addressed about that? Like you said, more information could gain that back, but how much drilling and work exactly would be required?
Yeah, so there's no solid answer to that. Basically, we know it's getting comfortable and getting your QP comfortable with the variation in the assays. You can see on that long cross section there we had of the fan drilling. You go from 20 grams per ton to 1 gram per ton. So it's about understanding that the influence of one assay to another. Is it 1 gram or is it 20 grams? The more drill points, intersections you have of the vein, statistically through this disintegration analysis, the better you can sort of hone in statistically on what is the right amount of capping to use. I think drilling is one big thing, just more drilling. The other thing is we can take a bulk sample. We have now exposed the Lucky Shot vein. That's the last, I think it was the last slide that I showed with Chris and I standing at the vein. We can take a bulk sample of that. We can go mine 10 tons of that or 100 tons of that and process that through a mini mill at a metallurgical facility. And that's going to tell us exactly how many ounces are recoverable in that 10 or 100 ton bulk sample. Because the project is located on the road and with good infrastructure, which is a big advantage, certainly in a place like Alaska, that's not a difficult thing for us to do. So that is something we'll be taking a look at over the course of the next year here. Just taking a big bulk sample, and that'll help, sort of address, because you'll have drill points in there, and you'll say, okay, based on the drilling, we thought there was X number of ounces using our capping strategy, and we go and take a 100-ton bulk sample, and we go, oh, geez, the gold's actually, if you uncap it, the gold's actually all there. So that's it'll be a bit of a process, but it's a good question, and you're better off being conservative in these cases, because what you don't want is to plan on having a bunch of gold there and go pay for mining it, and then see that you've been too liberal in your capping strategy. And we've seen examples of mining projects that have had that very thing and have had to shut down. So that's something we want to be very very prudent about.
Do you think everyone in this industry should be using this disintegration analysis for capping, or like you say, it's rather liberal with some methods out there? So do you think every stage, or is it a specific stage of a project, maybe companies should be using this type of strategy?
I think when you're putting out a resource, you want to be confident in the resource, and there are other ways to address capping. Some people just say, okay, well, they do look at a curve and they say anything over 20 grams per ton, we're just going to call 20 grams per ton rather than using the 30 or 40 grams per ton that got in it, or the 359 grams or 79 grams that we got in the one sample. The disintegration analysis is a much more sophisticated statistical approach, and it's one that I think is appropriate for these kind of nuggety ore bodies.
Thank you. We had a pre-submitted question here, just wondering about the status of permitting.
So Lucky Shot is a fully permitted mining site. So for mining, we're fully permitted. If we want to process and dispose of tailings on the site, we would need to permit for that. But from a mining standpoint, we're fully permitted.
Thank you. And another question here. Do you plan on sending the ore to Fort Knox?
We have no plans right now. First step is to find the ore body and define it, and look at what the best way to process this thing. We'll obviously take a look at that option, because we know Fort Knox has a big mill, and it's a hungry mill. There's plenty of capacity in it. This is a very simple ore from a metallurgical standpoint. It's quartz, very low sulfide, and free gold. So it would certainly fit in the Fort Knox circuit. But I think we really want to understand the ore body first, what it's going to cost to mine it, what it would cost to transport it. We do have the advantage of having rail within about 20 miles of the Lucky Shot facility, so we could use rail to get up to the Fairbanks area. There's a few other mills around in Alaska, so we don't just have Fort Knox to look at, but we could also look at building our own facility. And that'll just really depend on, we'll do some trade-off studies and understand what the best alternative is. And I'm sure we'll have a discussion with the folks at Kinross. We obviously know them well, and we know they've got a big mill. So it's a great piece of infrastructure for the state to have. And so it's definitely worth taking a look at.
Perfect. And I'll just refer to the audience again. Remember, you can continue to submit questions here, but I will go to the audience for questions. And I'm going to actually combine two because they go well together. How many years are you expecting to be in production? And on top of that, can you extend the life at Manh Choh?
Yeah, so we don't officially have reserves at this point. So it is just an initial resource. We're targeting to develop a resource of, say, 250 to 300,000 ounces of gold. And this would be in a measured indicated category that we can develop a mine plan around. Assuming we can do that in the next year or so, I think you're looking at a project here that could probably start producing 30,000 ounces and then quickly ramp up as you get more development working bases going to about 50,000 ounces. That's the size and scale of a mine that we envision. So, and just to put that into context, say comparing to our share of Manh Choh, that's a 50 to 75% increase in our gold production. So it's a pretty significant, for us, it's a very significant increase in production, and we think it's something we can do fairly quickly, and for not a lot of capital to develop the ore body. We're working on budgets now. Obviously, inflation's come down a bit. I think actually come down significantly for construction-related activities. But we just we're going to want to budget that and see. We've got some surface drilling to do. We've got a lot of underground drilling to do at Lucky Shot. So we'll get that lined up for later, starting later this summer. We do have to finance with Manh Choh's, we got Manh Choh organized, and now we want to raise more money so we can do more work here at Lucky Shot.
Definitely. MCM has a question. Can you speak on the conditions of any debt you have taken on? So maybe you could touch about the financing of your project.
Sure. So we have a $70 million debt facility with ING and Macquarie. We've used $10 million of that credit line, if you will. We're going to we have to participate for roughly the next $30 million of equity. So that's we're raising money for that, and then we want to also, as I mentioned, work on Lucky Shot. So we'll want to raise it in more than just the $30 million to cover our equity at Manh Choh. We also have a convertible note. Queens Road Capital put $20 million into the company, and there's a convertible note there. I think it's just a little over 19 now. We've obviously you pay back and issue shares as part of our convertible repayment structure. So yeah, that's those are the two debt facilities that we have: the 70 million credit facility with ING and the 20 million with Queens Road Capital.
Perfect, thank you. And Alice has a question about Lucky Shot. Just wondering if there's a preliminary all-in sustaining cost, if determinable.
Yeah, no. Again, this is at resource stage, so we've not done any sort of a proper, mining analysis, if you will. We think we can, mine. It's a high-grade underground mine, so your mining costs are, probably going to be in the $200 to $300 range. And so, you can start to get some ideas on, what your all-in sustaining costs will be. It really is going to depend on how much capital we have to raise, and that really depends on whether we're using the Fort Knox facility or some other facility that's already built, or whether we're going to build our own facility. So, and again, find the ore body first, and then do a lot of trade-off studies and figure out the best and simplest way to mine something. Permitting is obviously if you're permitting a new tailings facility, you can probably count on 3 to 5 years of process to do that. So it's certainly part of the equation. And so, that's the attractiveness. That was always the attractiveness with Manh Choh of using the Fort Knox facility. You don't have to build your own. So it changes the economics, and it also changes the time. And we all know time is money. So we'll definitely be looking at both those opportunities or both those options.
Perfect. And we addressed all the questions in the audience, so I'll leave you with the closing remarks. Maybe what are your thoughts on if we're going to experience the summer doldrums in 2023 and what people can look forward to in 2023 in regards to Contango specifically?
Well, certainly, at Manh Choh, as showed the photos, and there's just a lot of activity going on. This is the main second half of the year here is where the main expenditures are going to come at us. And I think when we go out there in September, we're going to see an open pit, stockpiles of ore and waste, and a lot of activity. They've got I think it's 6 or 7 geologists hired, and they're getting training now. So it'll be a very busy year out at Manh Choh. So we'll certainly be updating our investors and shareholders on that front. And then at Lucky Shot, obviously we've got to raise some money to get the program underway here. But once we do that, we'll have a pretty aggressive program with surface drilling over on the Coleman and then underground drilling at the Lucky Shot. So a lot of news flow. And once we start the underground program, the surface program, I think we want to be out of there by the end of September, before get too much snow up on top of the mountain. But underground, we can drill all winter long, and so we'll have a lot of news flow based on all the drilling that's going on there.
Perfect.
So pretty exciting time, and I think obviously this time next year we should be looking at gold bars coming out of Manh Choh.